the Dynasty Vipers Vipercast.
Our next stop on our Team Spotlight series, we are heading down to Houston to take a look at the Houston Texans. Houston, they struggled last season, as we all expected, and entering 2023, they are on their third head coach in as many years. The addition of Demeco Ryans will hopefully add a little bit of stability to this organization, while the selection of CJ Stroud there in this past draft should also solidify the quarterback position that Davis Mills has kind of handled the past couple seasons. Now, Houston averaged 17 points per game last season, which was the 17th highest there in the NFL. But listen, they only scored 289 points while surrendering 420, which is probably why they ended up at 3-13-1. And God bless Lovie Smith, because I mean, if it wasn't for Lovie Smith, maybe the Texans have Bryce Young under center this season. I don't know. Maybe Stroud was their guy all along. I mean, who knows, right? They're going to tell you whatever they want to tell you. I see this Texans team being right where they're at. I don't see a drastic improvement until these young guys all kind of get a couple more seasons under the belt. I think there's a lot of hope in Houston right now, but they are a 4-13 team. That is my projection right now when I look at them. And it's not because they have a bad roster, because when you look at this team, there is potential in which they could actually surprise some teams any given week. When you look at this defense, you got to start with the defensive line there, and Will Anderson there, the rookie out of Alabama, he kind of anchors this. Sheldon Rankins, Jerry Hughes, Malik Collins. I mean, Chase Winovich, he came over there, and then the linebacking core is actually pretty good. Another Alabama linebacker there in Christian Harris. You got Christian Kirksey there and Denzel Perryman, who had quite a few tackles. They also got some depth there as well at the position with Neville Hewitt, Corey Littleton, and Henry Tutu, again, out of Alabama. Maybe they have this thing for Alabama players. And their secondary is actually really good because they've got Steven Nelson, Jimmy Ward, Jalen Petrie, and Derek Stingley. And this offense, it's not an all-star type offense, but it could be good enough to get the job done. We mentioned Stroud there under center. And at the running back position, it's Dameon Pierce, Devin Singletary, Mike Boone. At wide receiver, they've got some pretty good pass catchers here in Robert Woods, Nico Collins, John Mecthie, Tank Dell, Noah Brown, Xavier Hutchinson, Amari Rogers. So there are some guys who can catch the ball in this receiver's room. Tight end, Dalton Schultz, great addition here. Defensively, Titus Howard and Laramie Tunsil, they anchor the tackle positions, both amongst the best in the league. And they've got themselves a couple good guards there in Kenyon Green and Shaq Mace, not to mention the rookie Juice Scruggs there at center. So there's a lot of promise on this team right now heading into 2023 and beyond. Now, the camp battle that we all need to watch, it's Tank Dell versus Robert Woods, the rookie that CJ Stroud asked for specifically by name during the draft, and a reliable veteran who actually led that Titans team in receiving a season ago. Dell's speed in and out of cuts, man, it is next level. And Bobby Trees looks like his roots are planted right in the turf, and he ain't going anywhere anytime soon. They may start off with Robert Woods being the top option there for CJ Stroud there out of the slot or wherever they want to put Robert Woods, because he can kind of move around there. But when it's all said and done, watch out for Tank Dell, because he just brings a totally new dynamic to this team. And when the rookie quarterback specifically asks for a guy, that's something that we have to take note of, especially when it comes down to fantasy. Now, when we take a look further into what this team did, let's talk about that draft. 102, we mentioned CJ Stroud there. 103, they ended up making the big move of the draft, moving up there and getting Will Anderson. In the second round, I said Drew Scruggs there. Third round, we talk about Tank Dell. Fourth round, Dylan Horton. Fifth round, Henry Tutu there. They also had another center than Jared Patterson for a little bit of depth. And again, in the sixth round, Xavier Hutchinson out of Iowa State. Now, the biggest additions for this team came via the offseason there. Head coach Demeco Ryans, Jimmy Ward, Robert Woods, Dalton Schultz, Sheldon Rankins, Devin Singletary, Shaq Mason, Noah Brown, and Chase Winovich. You're basically seeing the Demeco Ryans effect here right now when you look at all the pieces that the Texans added during the offseason. People want to go to Houston and play for Demeco Ryans. Demeco Ryans is one of those coaches that you would want to run through a wall for, and we're seeing that. Now, some of the players that they lost, Brandon Cooks, he's now a Dallas Cowboy. Philip Dorsett, he's in Vegas. They lost a Conqueror there, the edge rusher, as well as Jordan Atkins, the tight end. So the best move, obviously, it's Demeco Ryans, hands down, right? He's what's going to stir this whole drink. He's what's bringing talent into this roster. But if you want to look at a certain player, I know I've said some things about Dalton Schultz in the past, but you have to get excited about his addition to this Texans offense because he gives the Texans one of the most underrated passing units in the game. Listen, Schultz ended up catching 57 of 89 targets a season ago for 577 yards, and that was with the Dallas Cowboys. He's going to bring a veteran presence, a veteran target for Stroud there, as well as these other pass catchers that are a little bit younger that he's going to be, Stroud's going to be targeting there. So Dalton Schultz is that veteran, reliable target. I think he's going to have one of those huge seasons. And I wouldn't be surprised if Schultz ends up being a top 5 fantasy tight end when it's all said and done, because he's been there, he's done that, and he's got an opportunity to do it once again here in Houston. Now, the worst move, look, I love Will Anderson. He's going to be a great player. There is no doubt about it. But considering where the Houston Texans are right now, I don't like this risk versus reward. I think Houston would have been better off holding on to all their picks and continue to fill up this roster moving forward. There's still a lot of holes that they need to fill, and they gave up a lot to acquire Will Anderson, including a first-round pick next season that's probably going to be in the top 5. So the Cardinals are sitting back there and saying, hey, we could absolutely collapse for Caleb here in 2023 and still add another great player, maybe even Marvin Harrison Jr. That'd be something for Arizona fans, but we'll talk about that on another show another day. So what needs to happen for the Houston Texans? CJ Stroud's arrival is going to improve this offense. There are some good pieces in place to support him, and we have Demeco Ryans, who's here to put his stamp on the defense. Good defense is going to make this offense look a little bit better. The additions of Jimmy Ward there and Will Anderson to this defense that already featured Stingley, Jalen Petrie, Christian Harris, Christian Kirksey, and Denzel Perryman. There's a reason why Demeco Ryans took this job. There were some good pieces already in place. Now, Houston, like I said, they're not ready to win yet, but I'll tell you what, they're going to compete each and every week. And the record at the end of the season may not show it. I've got them again at 4-13, but they're going to be in a lot of games, and they're going to be a headache for a lot of teams. Now, when you take a look at the top fantasy options, it starts with my guy, Dameon Pierce. Now, despite seeing just 39 targets last season, Pierce was the RB15 in fantasy through 14 weeks before that injury ended his season. In those 14 contests, Pierce was averaging 72.2 yards per contest. Now, CJ Stroud there, he comes in at number 2. The rookie schedule for fantasy is incredibly friendly, especially during the fantasy playoffs. And as the season goes, one can expect Stroud to continue to build chemistry with that underrated group of pass catchers. At number 3, let's talk about one of those pass catchers. He's my guy, John Mecthie. There may not be a better story in the entire NFL than John Mecthie's, and I don't even think it's yet to be written. Now, he's fully healed from that ACL. He's cancer-free, and we finally get to see Mecthie back on the field doing what he does best, and that is exploiting opposing defenses with his speed. He may be one of those guys in best ball or whatever you want to look at that's going to be a difference maker. I've got him a lot higher than the consensus does right now. If you're looking for a sleeper play, we'll talk about that in a second. Mecthie's probably that guy. Now, number 4 is Dalton Schultz. Schultz has the 3rd most contested catches over the last 2 seasons at the tight end position. In fact, in the last 3 seasons, only he, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, and TJ Hawkinson have recorded at least 50 catches and at least 500 yards in each of those seasons. And at number 5, Nico Collins. In 9 games when Collins was healthy, he would average 7 targets per contest, with many of those being deemed as uncatchable, 39%. Davis Mills is out. CJ Stroud is in. That number of uncatchable targets is going to drop. So who is the top play in fantasy on this Houston Texans roster? Well, it's the number 1 fantasy asset, and that is Dameon Pierce. When you're looking at this team, Devin Singletary, he was brought in to handle the pass catching duties. That is going to have no effect on Pierce and his fantasy prospects because Pierce simply wasn't getting targets. He had 220 carries despite missing the Texans' final 4 contests, which works out to nearly 17 carries per game. He's not going to get 17 carries per game. Devin Singletary is going to come in and get some of those carries. Let's be honest. But we know that the Texans love Dameon Pierce, so expect him to still be averaging 15 carries per game. It's what I believe is going to happen. There's going to be more offense to go around for the Houston Texans because this offense is better than it had been. Stroud is definitely an improvement on Davis Mills, so expect the Texans to have the ball more often, and the way this defense is playing, they're going to get the ball back to the offense. So when you look at the numbers from last season, as far as carries and touches are concerned, I'm expecting those numbers to go up, which means we're going to see a nice stable line there for Dameon Pierce at 15 carries per contest, while Devin Singletary is still going to get his carries, but he's also going to get those targets. So how about a fantasy sleeper on this Texans roster? Well, look no further than Tank Dell. When a quarterback asks for you by name in the draft, that's got to mean something, right? I mean, look, this Texans offense, we don't know who the alpha wide receiver is going to be, which means pretty much any of these receivers could emerge as a number one when it comes down to PPR type formats. Dell is a player that can work in the slot, create those mismatches, and despite his size or lack thereof, he is going to be a nightmare. At Houston, at the University of Houston, Dell would go on to back-to-back 1,300-yard seasons there, seeing at least 135 targets and hauling in 90 passes in each of the last 2 seasons there while scoring 29 times. So we can see the production value of Tank Dell. We know that he's got speed, we know that he's got skill, and we know he's going to create mismatches. So when you're looking for a sleeper, he could be that guy. Now, for the best value, I'm going to turn my attention to John Mecthie because, well, quite frankly, this is my list, and I love myself some John Mecthie, who happens to be a complete unknown himself. Mecthie is still the youngest wide receiver on this Texans roster. He's got the most draft capital invested in him, and his ADP, it is the equivalent to Odell Beckham Jr. Go back to Alabama, look at the tape, 620 yards after the catch, a 56.3 contested catch rate, 24 missed tackles, a 113.4 passer rating when targeted. The dude just went out there and balled. And it's like we forgot about it because he missed all of last season. And quite frankly, his college career kind of ended with that ACL injury as well. So we've kind of forgotten how good John Mecthie really was. I'm telling you right now, don't forget about him. When you're looking at players to add later in your drafts, perhaps you can really do no wrong than any of these Texans wide receivers. They're all basically free. A lot of them are going to go undrafted or very late. Now, I prefer Mecthie as a guy that I have to have on all my rosters, and I'm adding him wherever I can. But I haven't forgotten what he did in college, but I'm not going to forget what Tank Dell did in college. I'm not going to forget how much I loved Nico Collins last season. I think why I love Nico Collins last season, you can still love him for the same reasons this season. But when I look at all these wide receivers, the one I have to have is going to be John Mecthie. I mean, I mentioned everything above him, but more than anything, I think he's got that eye of the tiger, so to speak. Look, he's going to be hungry, looking to remind people just how good he was because we have forgotten that. I mean, we in fantasy, we're looking at the next thing all the time. We don't like to look back. But in this case, you have to look back because we haven't seen anything in the present. We haven't seen him really on the field a whole heck of a lot. So you have to go back. You have to remind yourself how good he really was. And in this offense, I think he could be really, really good. With that all being said, this has been your Houston Texans Team Spotlight. We'll see you next week.